I want you to imagine your last bowl of ordinary white rice. Just the plain, everyday side dish you might get with takeout.
Right. Or, maybe just boil up on a busy weeknight in your own kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. It's cheap, it's completely ubiquitous, and I mean, honestly, it's entirely unremarkable.
Different.
But now I want you to take that exact same bowl and imagine paying an absolute fortune for it. Like, imagine that simply eating white rice is a status symbol so unbelievably powerful that it is reserved almost exclusively for nobility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for imperial courts and elite warriors. It sounds absurd.
I mean, completely absurd, yeah.
But what if I told you that this surprisingly mundane image of a bowl of rice is actually like the perfect lens for understanding the bleeding edge of artificial intelligence today?
It is a massive conceptual leap, I'll admit.
Yeah.
But when you look at the underlying mechanics, it is incredibly accurate.
Right.
We are talking about how radical technological shifts completely rewire what society considers a luxury versus, what we consider a basic everyday utility.
And the source material we are diving into today is actually very close to home for both of us.
It really is.
We are looking at a recent essay written by Quan Nguyen. Now, you and I both know Quan is he founded Skill Wanderer.
Yeah, the very educational guild that we work for.
Exactly. But this piece he just published, it's titled From White Rice to Websites: How Technology Turns Elite Services into Everyday Tools. And I mean, it really transcends our day-to-day operations.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just an update, it's a manifesto about where the entire tech industry is heading.
It's a profound look at the economics of technology. The core mission of our deep dive today is to really explore Quan's underlying thesis, which is how AI is fundamentally changing the economics of web development.
Right.
And the critical point he makes is that AI is not doing this by destroying the craft of coding.
Which is what everyone is afraid of, right?
Exactly. Instead, it's taking what used to be a highly expensive elite service and turning it into an accessible, everyday tool for the exact people who need it the most.
People who have historically been priced out.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we can start throwing around terms like AI or neural networks or web architecture, we really have to understand the historical precedent.
Give me the context, yeah.
Right, of how things actually become accessible in the first place. Which brings us back to that bowl of rice.
The famous rice analogy.
Yeah. According to the historical data in Quan's essay, for centuries, polished white rice was not ordinary food. It was a massive luxury because, well, the human labor required to produce it was staggering.
Because they had to do it by hand.
Exactly. Hulling rice by hand is, it's incredibly slow, backbreaking work.
Yeah.
And polishing it, actually removing the bran just to get that soft, pure white grain, is even slower.
What's fascinating here is that the sheer number of human hours required to process it meant the labor costs priced everyday families entirely out of the market.
Right.
Most households were eating brown rice or millet or, whatever mixed grains they could grow. White rice was literally used to pay samurai stipends.
Wait, really? As currency?
Yeah. It was a currency for wealthy merchants and warlords. You were basically eating the physical manifestation of someone else's expensive labor.
Man. But then, obviously, technology enters the chat.
As it always does.
Right. We get better milling tools, industrial processing, streamlined transport, and within just a few generations, this ultimate status symbol becomes one of the cheapest carbohydrates on the grocery store shelf.
Which is a huge shift.
Huge. And Quan highlights a really specific distinction here, which is that technology didn't make white rice less valuable as a nutritional food source. It just stopped it from being scarce.
Exactly.
But I have to ask you, is this just a fun historical food fact to open an essay? Or is Quan identifying a universal law of economics here?
It is absolutely a universal law, and it is a continuously repeating historical pattern.
Okay.
If you look closely at the last 600 years of human progress, as Quan points out, you keep seeing this exact same shape. Take books, for example.
Oh, right, before the printing press.
Yeah. Before Gutenberg invented the printing press with movable type, a single hand-copied manuscript could literally cost the equivalent of a house.
That's insane.
Monks spent years copying a single Bible. It was the ultimate elite privilege. But after the printing press, books eventually became something a middle-class merchant could own.
And then a school child.
Right. And now, You can walk into any public library and walk out with 10 of them for free.
The same thing happened with photography, actually. I mean, getting a family portrait used to mean paying a trained oil painter to sit with you for weeks.
Only the ultra-elite could afford to have their image preserved.
Exactly. Then you get the daguerreotype studio in the 1800s, which was cheaper, but still a major financial event.
Still out of reach for many.
Yeah, and then the Kodak Brownie camera makes it a household item. And today, I mean, there's a high-definition camera phone in the pockets of 3 billion people.
And we've seen it in design, too. Think about typesetting.
Oh, man, yeah.
It used to be a highly guarded guild craft. You had to apprentice for years just to understand kerning and leading, the actual physical spacing of metal letters.
Right, physically placing the letters.
Exactly. Then came desktop publishing software like PageMaker, then Photoshop. And now we have browser-based tools like Canva, where, a local bakery owner with zero formal design training can throw together a perfectly serviceable event poster in 20 minutes.
So the core thesis here is that in every single one of these historical shifts, the original artisan didn't disappear.
Right.
The master oil painter, the fine art gallery photographer, the high-end literary publisher, they all still exist.
Right.
And they still command top dollar for bespoke work.
They absolutely do.
But the baseline moved. The floor was dramatically lowered. Elite privileges become everyday tools without any grand ceremony. And Kwan is arguing that custom websites and basic software services are standing right on the edge of that exact same drop.
Which is an incredibly bold claim.
Yeah.
But to understand it, we have to look at the mechanism of that shift.
Okay.
Because since we know the baseline always moves eventually, we have to look at the specific tool that is providing the gravity to pull it down this time.
See, this is where I'm struggling to connect the dots a bit. I understand the rice. I understand the printing press. But how do we get from a bowl of rice in the 1500s to a neural network writing Python today?
It feels like a leap.
Yeah. Like, what is the bridge between those two realities?
Well, the bridge is a concept from a previous essay of Kwan's, which he references here, the Tanegashima Shift.
Right, the muskets.
Yeah. In 16th century Japan, the Tanegashima were early firearms, basically matchlock muskets, introduced by Portuguese traders.
Okay.
When these rudimentary guns hit the battlefield, they completely upended the social order. They didn't eliminate the need for battlefield tactics or terrain mastery or military discipline.
You still needed all that.
Right. But a peasant with a few weeks of training on a musket could suddenly take down a samurai who had trained with a sword for his entire life. It completely destroyed the social hierarchy built around the blade.
Okay, I think I see where this is going. It's like moving from a manual to an automatic transmission in a car.
That's a great analogy.
Like, you still have to know how to navigate the roads, you have to read the traffic signs, and you definitely still need the judgment to avoid crashing into a tree.
Yeah, the fundamental driving skills.
Exactly. But the barrier to entry of mastering the clutch, that physical, highly specialized mechanical barrier is just gone. Almost anyone can put it in drive and hit the gas.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the distinction between Kwan's previous essay and this new one is crucial. The original Tanegashima piece was about the coder's identity.
Like how developers feel.
Yeah, how a senior developer feels when a machine can suddenly write 100 lines of boilerplate code in 3 seconds. It's about the existential dread of the samurai seeing the musket.
That makes sense.
But this new essay, this is entirely about the market. AI is the modern musket. It does not remove the need for engineering judgment, but it radically changes who can build, how fast they can build, and fundamentally what is economically possible to create for a normal person.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I want to interrupt and push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Because if I can fire up Claude or ChatGPT right now, give it a prompt, and watch it spit out a beautiful functional landing page in 10 minutes, well, charging someone $4,000 for a custom website feels like highway robbery at that point.
It does feel that way to a lot of people.
Right. So why doesn't Kwan just come out and say the old agency way of building websites was a massive scam?
Because it wasn't a scam. It was an economic reality.
Okay. Explain that.
Kwan actually goes out of his way to defend the old, expensive agency model. He points out that for most of the web's history, a custom website cost a meaningful sum up front, say $4,000 to $10,000,
Right.
because the production cost and the sheer risk involved were incredibly high.
High how, though? I mean, typing code on a keyboard doesn't cost physical materials.
No, but human time is the most expensive material of all.
Oh, true.
In the old model, you had to deal with design mockups, front-end and back-end development, setting up hosting, deployment, which is this incredibly complex process of getting code from a local computer onto a live public server.
Right, there are a lot of moving parts.
And you had to do SEO, making sure Google actually knows you exist instead of burying you on page 50.
Mhm.
And then you had the nightmare of browser compatibility.
Oh man, don't get me started on that.
Right. A single bug where a drop-down menu worked on Google Chrome but completely broke on Safari on an iPhone could eat up an entire week of the senior developer's time.
That sounds exhausting.
It was. The agency had to charge $4,000 because they were absorbing a massive amount of risk and highly specialized labor.
Okay, fair. But again, playing devil's advocate here, AI solves a lot of that boilerplate now. The baseline has drastically moved. So why defend that old $4,000 process today?
Because we have to clarify exactly what AI changes and what it absolutely does not. Yes, the cost of generating a first draft drops sharply.
Which is huge.
It is. A small operator can now prototype an idea, throw the code away if it's bad, and prototype again without burning through a massive corporate budget. But, and this is the core distinction the essay makes, AI does not change the need for architectural choices.
Meaning AI is incredible at writing 100 lines of syntax in a vacuum, but it lacks global context.
Precisely. You ask an AI to build a checkout page, and it will write the code perfectly. But it doesn't know that if it routes the data through a certain pathway, it might accidentally expose secure user passwords on a different page.
Oh, yikes. Yeah, that's a problem.
A huge problem. It doesn't know what to build or why you're building it. You still need a human who understands how to patch security vulnerabilities. You need someone to deal with the dreaded, it broke at 2 a.m. and the server is on fire. Reality of software.
That is inevitable.
Completely inevitable. For complex enterprise platforms, like a banking app with real user traffic and secure databases, the old agency model makes perfect sense. The craft of senior engineering isn't gone, it's just that the production cost of the baseline has dropped.
And this brings us to the real tragedy of that old model, because it was built entirely around enterprise budgets. A massive group of everyday people simply got left behind.
A huge chunk of the population, yeah.
Think about who actually needs a simple, clean, reliable website. We aren't talking about a multinational corporation. We're talking about a first-time novelist who just needs a home for their books and a place to collect an email list.
Right.
Or a recent college graduate hunting for a job who wants to stand out. Or a local craftsperson who sells handmade leather goods at a farmer's market.
And for those people, a $4,000 upfront cost isn't just a business expense to write off at the end of the year. It's a massive, often insurmountable personal financial risk.
Geez.
The outcome of their novel or their job hunt is uncertain, so betting thousands of dollars on a digital presence feels deeply reckless.
So what do? They settle. They settle for a generic bio-link tree or a half-finished drag-and-drop site they got frustrated with, or they just have nothing at all.
Which is so common.
And the psychological toll of that is real. They quietly internalize the idea that they aren't a quote-unquote real professional. They assume the door to an elite digital presence is permanently closed to them.
And explaining that exact gap is the entire point of this essay. And honestly, it's the reason Skill Wanderer exists.
Yeah, it really is.
The organization's technical partnership model is designed specifically to address this forgotten middle.
Yeah.
The way it works under the hood is brilliant.
Tell me about it.
The large client work Skill Wanderer does, building tools and internal apps for bigger companies, actually funds the free education and mentorship side of the guild.
Right. But what's incredible here is the paradigm shift. They are taking the exact same AI efficiencies that massive corporations use to cut jobs and weaponizing them to make professional engineering cheap enough for a local baker to afford.
Exactly.
That is a massive reversal of how tech usually flows.
It really is.
Yeah.
By utilizing AI-assisted tooling in their production stack, Skill Wanderer dramatically lowers their own internal costs. That means they can afford to take on these much smaller scope projects for individual creators without the underlying economics breaking down.
Recognizing that problem is one thing, but the essay actually details how Skill Wanderer is solving it right now in the real world.
With the pilot program.
Yeah, they are launching a pilot program. They are taking exactly 10 writers and exactly 10 job seekers to test a completely new quarterly paid partnership model.
It's a really interesting approach.
And the deliverables here are critical. They aren't just giving these people a profile on a walled garden platform. They are delivering a real indexable website, fully viewable code, and zero vendor lock-in.
Let's define that for a second, because Vendor lock-in is a trap so many fall into.
Oh, absolutely.
It's what happens when you use a cheap drag-and-drop website builder.
Right.
You don't actually own your site. You're just renting space on their proprietary platform.
Right.
If they raise their prices or if the company goes bankrupt, your website vanishes. You can't just take your code and leave.
Right. The analogy I'd use here is the old model was like hiring an expensive contractor to build you a custom house. They pour the concrete, they frame the walls, they hand you the keys, and they walk away.
And then you're on your own.
Yeah. And 5 years later, when the plumbing inevitably leaks, you are entirely on your own to figure it out. Which is terrifying if you don't know anything about pipes.
I wouldn't know where to start.
Me neither. Now, with AI, pouring the concrete and framing the walls is incredibly fast and cheap. The initial labor is basically free.
Right.
But AI doesn't know the local zoning laws, and it doesn't know your house is built on a floodplain.
That's a great point.
What this pilot program is offering is a quarterly partnership. Skill Wanderer helps you build the house using AI leverage. You still hold the deed and completely own it, but they act as the architect to make sure it doesn't sink.
And the plumber who comes back every quarter to clear out the digital pipes.
Exactly.
This raises an important question, though, and it's one Kwon addresses directly. Why do we need a plumber at all?
You're right.
How do we stop websites from rotting? Because digital decay is a very real, very persistent phenomenon.
We've all seen it. You go to a local restaurant's website, the menu is a blurry PDF, and the copyright at the very bottom still says, like, 2018.
Right. Small websites decay because the original developer hands off the project and disappears.
Yep.
The internet is constantly shifting beneath the code.
Yeah.
APIs, which are basically the digital bridges that let your website talk to other services like Google Maps or a payment processor like Stripe, they constantly update.
They break all the time.
All the time. If the bridge changes and your code doesn't, suddenly your checkout page just vanishes. Plugins age out and become massive security risks. Links break.
It's a mess.
So this quarterly relationship model isn't just a pricing trick to spread out the cost. It's structurally designed to combat that exact decay. Skill Wanderer stays beside the partner to keep the site actually working as the web evolves.
So what does this all mean for the people who actually write code for a living?
That is the big question.
Because anytime we talk about dramatically lowering the cost of a specialized service, it naturally causes massive anxiety across the industry. Professional developers hear democratization and they think unemployment.
Of course they do.
Does this model inherently devalue the hard work of software engineers? Is this just a race to the bottom where nobody gets paid what they're worth anymore?
It is arguably the most common fear in the tech industry right now. And Kwon includes a very deliberate note to address it.
Okay.
He points out that the senior engineers he respects the most aren't actually threatened by a novelist getting a tidy, affordable website.
That makes sense.
What they are threatened by, and rightfully so, is the toxic discourse that pretends engineering judgment is suddenly obsolete. It's that pervasive narrative that says, anyone with a text prompt is now a software architect.
Yeah, that narrative is everywhere on social media, and it's incredibly dismissive of the actual science of computer science. It basically equates typing a sentence with understanding system architecture.
And Kwon heavily pushes back against that. He assures the reader that the high-end craft is completely safe. AI simply doesn't know how to scale a database to handle 1 million concurrent users during a Super Bowl ad.
Right, it just can't do it.
What is happening is simply that the floor is no longer the ceiling. We have to look back at our rhyming history. Desktop publishing software didn't destroy Vogue or Time magazine.
No, it just meant a passionate kid in their garage could start an indie zine.
Exactly. Photography didn't destroy fine art painting. It just meant everyday people could finally have a picture of their grandmother on the mantle.
So AI-assisted development isn't going to destroy the career of a senior software engineer building high-frequency trading infrastructure.
And not at all.
It just changes who gets to have a digital presence worth pointing to. It allows the people who have always been on the wrong side of the price curve, the writers, the job seekers, the local bakers, to finally walk through a door they thought was permanently locked.
It is fundamentally about distributing access. The technology allows a guild like Skill Wanderer to hold that door open for everyday creators without bankrupting themselves in the process.
It is such a fascinating journey when you really zoom out and look at the whole picture.
It really is.
We started by looking at the incredible backbreaking labor required to polish a single bowl of white rice centuries ago. And we trace that exact same economic pattern all the way to the automation of AI-assisted code today.
It's amazing how history repeats itself.
Yeah. We've explored how our very own skill wanderer is leveraging this massive technological shift not to build the next billion-dollar unicorn startup for investors, but to open doors for everyday people who previously thought an elite digital presence just wasn't for them.
It's a vital reminder that technology is at its absolute best when it moves a tool from the hand of the elite few into the hands of the many.
And that leaves us with one final, frankly provocative thought for you to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
Oh, here we go.
If history definitively shows us that technology consistently takes elite privileges, whether that's hand-copied books or oral-painted portraits or polished rice and now custom web development, and turns them into everyday tools,
Right.
what happens when AI eventually drops the baseline cost of education and learning itself to near zero?
That is a huge question.
When hyper-personalized, expert-level mentorship is no longer an elite privilege reserved for expensive universities, how will that completely redefine what it means to be a skilled wanderer in the future?
It changes everything.
It really does. Something to chew on the next time you sit down with a simple bowl of white rice.